So let's talk about pay for play, which is participation on the youth level, which requires contribution from one's parents, or maybe enslaves children so they can pay a little bit of money to their soccer coaches. Now, across all the websites, across all the television studios and sets in the United States, pay for play is getting bad publicity, and in fact is getting bad publicity, or was getting bad publicity, even following the 2010 World Cup, from Jurgen Klinsmann himself, and himself being future coach of the United States. To him, it was incompatible with the development of soccer. Now, to some extent, he may have a point, but he really doesn't. So his point was that just because in foreign countries, and foreign meaning his own native country like Germany, don't have pay-per-play, then the United States system of youth soccer, which does require, for the most part, payments for the kids playing soccer, for kids playing for various teams, is somehow incompatible with development of the game in the United States. And he's wrong, and Taylor Twellman's wrong, and everybody else is wrong. Let me tell you why. Well, first of all, just as a premise, let's look at acting industry, the acting business, the big stars, the Meryl Streeps and the Robert De Niro's and Jack Nicholson. Well, Dustin Hoffman's. Because I'm old, I'm looking at the older people as a standard. But it's true about younger people, younger actresses or actors too. Most of them hone their craft by either going to acting school but with private studios, private teachers, or going to universities where they studied acting. Meryl Streep went to Yale, drama, studied acting there. Of course, Robert De Niro and Marlon Brando and Al Pacino, a lot of those people studied with Stella Adler and not Lee Steinberg. Stella Adler and the guy who played Hyman Roth in Godfather. The best teachers don't come for free. Somehow, it doesn't affect the acting profession. There are quite a few great actors who have learned their craft from the best teachers in the industry. Which side do I go? Where's more light, less light? They have like a little side light here. Anyway, so it doesn't affect actors. And of course, it doesn't affect piano players. It doesn't affect Wall Street executives who have gone to best private schools most of the time and gotten their degrees, their MBAs and their doctorates for those who have. And the same thing go with lawyers. So why should pay for play affect soccer players? It doesn't. Now, what affects them, of course, the quality of their coaches. And for the most part, the coaching quality is poor, unlike in Germany, and that's where it really is important, or England or Brazil or Spain, where coaches are usually ex-pros, people who have extensive playing experience at the top level, and then submitted to various coaching license requirements in order to teach the kids. Most coaches in the United States have never played above a rudimentary level, college level most of the time. Some, of course, are MLS pros. And that was during MLS was real garbage. At least MLS is better now. So when one looks at the education the kids get, it's of very poor quality. It's not that they're paying for something, it's that they're paying for crap. The second problem with the U.S. youth soccer, youth system, is that players often, or clubs, private clubs, are designed to win tournaments, because winning tournaments is what brings them, richer parents. Parents will say, "Oh, my kid wants to go to college, perhaps on soccer scholarship." So this is where everything is based on. Oh, he went to XYZ youth team, and XYZ has a great reputation, so we're going to recruit from that, because if we recruit from that school and the player screws up, well, it's his fault, it's not my fault. I have the best of references. And the top coaches, because they're not very good and they don't train the necessary skills to their youth prospects, they pretty much rely on kind of what in hockey would call dump and chase. It doesn't require a lot of skill. It requires a lot of work. People are really hard working. Now, what happens in soccer is that you punt the ball forward and somebody runs toward it. You put your fastest, biggest guy up front, and everybody else just kicks the ball to them. It's completely void of skill, completely void of technical knowledge, tactical knowledge. regardless of that, US U17 teams do okay. I mean, the last team still managed to get, I mean, officially tied for first place on points, although they're actually third. We're third in goal difference. So, as bad as coaching is, the better players, harder working players, more athletic players still manage to get to a fairly reasonable level. The biggest problem is MLS. Because well, let's look at the average European academy setup. They have the, under 15, under 17 kids. Once they go to under 19, the U19s, the key there is polishing of one's talent. I mean, they know all the rudimentary facts, all the basic facts. They have the basic skills. They have the basic understanding of team soccer. Now you have to teach them the mental part. And the mental part becomes fairly evolved. This is why great coaches like Guardiola and so on and so forth, they know how to put those chess pieces on the board, where you have 4 players, where you have 3 players, where you have no players, where the backup, where you rotate, how you attack on this side, that. That's, very intricate tactical or strategic knowledge of the game, understanding of the game. That's what the U17 and U19 strive for. Now, some players develop physically past that age, some don't, but some figure out mentally and some don't. And that's what makes European soccer essentially better than any other soccer, although of course Brazilian and Argentine soccer has been very important over the years. But that's what currently makes the Barcelonas and the big European clubs superior to anyone else. And of course, they have the best players, so they have the most money, and they bring in even better players. And then it really becomes very much a matter of tactics and figuring out how you play and how you match up and what do you do and so on and so forth. This is why Barcelona lost to Juventus 3-0 last season and beat him 3-0 this season. Players are pretty much the same. They're different coaches. They're different coaches at Barcelona. So let's move to the biggest problem. Let me repeat the youth non-problem. Here's what makes pay-for-play a right fit for the United States. There are not enough teams to support millions and millions of youth players in the United States. When a club pays for soccer kids' education, for young soccer players, coaching, and the club decides who it wants and who it doesn't. And however good the European clubs are, they don't have probably more than 50 players in their youth systems, at least 15 years and above. Or maybe 25 players per group, 25 for under 17, 25 under 19, 25 under 23. That's like 70 players. Of those 70 players, maybe a handful will make it into the high-end pro level, which is fine with them because they train someone to be a high-end pro player. I mean, Bayern Munich or Borussia Dortmund, they don't trade players to be violinists. They want them to be pros, and that's what they want. And they don't waste time and money on players who have no future in pro sports. What they want is the top player, or a potentially top player, somebody with abilities, mental, physical, etc., to be a top player. In the United States, the top league is MLS. And MLS is now staffed with mediocre foreign players with green cards. That's the bulk of MLS. MLS gets players from college, some from youth academies, and essentially keeps them perpetually crappy. Dortmund, a team like Dortmund or Schalke or whatever in Germany, or any kind of a Southampton in England, they bring in talent. They want them to develop into a Gareth Bale or what's his name, the guy with Arsenal. There are a whole bunch of Southampton players, of course, Lallana and others who have sort of entered the league through Southampton and then became all-stars in English international or Welsh international in case of Bale, and move better. So in Europe, every team wants to develop that $50 million, $100 million player. And MLS, they just want to develop crappy MLS players. That's the problem for the United States national team. United States needs to have these $50 million players. But MLS doesn't do it. It doesn't deliver on the expectations. So if you look at youth soccer with all its problems delivers players that are capable, sort of, kind of, mostly, of going to the next level, which is the U19. So Pulisic went to U17, U19 over at Dortmund, and he graduated. He's a great player now. He's a great young player. Other players go to European leagues. They fail, but that's the way it is. That's like in the NFL. If you look at top high school prospects, not all of them become top NFL picks. Not all top NFL picks become even good NFL players, let alone Hall of Fame players of the future. The problem with MLS and the problem with U.S. soccer is that MLS doesn't deliver any player that even, really, there've been not a single player in the last 4 or 5 years who was sold by MLS to a foreign club to be even an average starter. That's the type of player that is needed by U.S. national team. There are plenty of look at draft picks of MLS. There are like 20 players, 30 players, like 20 players first round, and there's like second round. So there are like 40 new players that come into the league every year, and none of them graduates to the better league. They remain stable. They remain, grounded at an inferior team and inferior level. That's the problem. It's not pay for play. Pay for play allows more players to participate by paying their coaches. The problem is that MLS doesn't pay their coaches to develop players, nor does it want to sell. That's the problem with MLS. Mediocrity. Mediocrity because they're married in a mediocre league who is not even interested remotely in producing great players. And you have to produce great players. If you don't produce great players, you don't qualify for the World Cup.